Thus here we want just to also use that particular clip by William Ruto as a segue. Also looking at what we have on our touch screen this morning. This is an editorial cartoon by Gado, right? They can comment on this particular debate about referendum. Is it a distraction on what is really happening? Some are saying this is a red herring, looking at what has been actually captured here by Gado. He says, see, that will keep the country busy for the next 1 year while we strategize. And we can see a battery of journalists following the referendum debate as well. Dr. Otiende Amollo, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning, Kenya. I think it's an interesting piece, especially listening to the Deputy President. I think it's clear he's been now dragged to submit to the inevitability of changes to the Constitution, kicking and screaming. I think that the way this matter should be framed is not whether we must have a referendum or not. It should be framed in terms of whether we need to review the Constitution or not. And if framed that way, then whether it must result in a referendum will be a product of what areas we have identified as requiring any changes. And it is perfectly possible that we might end up identifying areas that only require changes by Parliament. It is also possible that it might go beyond Parliament and require referendum. I've said here before two things. One, that it is inevitable that we must revisit the Constitution, because it is also inevitable that the IBC must revisit the boundaries of constituencies and even counties, and that's between 8 and 12 years. And 8 and 12 years will fall before 2021. And once you go reviewing boundaries of constituencies and all, you already touching on changes to the Constitution. Secondly, the Building Bridges initiative,
yes,
if they are to do the work that they were given properly, if you are to resolve the long-standing issues in these countries, and I said this before, it's inevitable, in my opinion, that some of those changes must touch on the Constitution. And therefore, I think that it is ripe to consider. What we must now start focusing on, one, is time. The Building Bridges initiative has a very, very short time, perhaps much shorter than they appreciate. The cycle of changing the Constitution, especially if it involves a referendum, way before the next general election, gives them a very, very short span. And two, we must focus on what changes that we want to have done. We must be careful not to give an opportunity for those who are opposed to the Constitution in the first place because of its progressive nature. They might want to take the opportunity to now reintroduce the very non-progressive provisions that some of them had preferred, and that is something we must be very worried about. Yes.
All right, let's say from Kimani Wamatangi, first of all, looking at that editorial cartoon, what do you think? Are we being distracted?
Well, you know, Debarl, morning, and I want to say good morning to our viewers too. And my view on this, Debarl, is that intended or not, it's becoming a distraction, either way, because for whatever either good purpose it will play at the end of the day when it is done, for whatever political ends it might meet, but for this time, it is a distraction. Because, remember, even last time I said here, we're in 2018, hardly an year after the elections. And then, remember, when we tried when we held a referendum twice before, actually it is a full-fledged campaign, just like we normally campaign when we are going to elections.
Yes.
And so, once we set the country into this mood, and then we are saying we are now talking about a referendum and almost starting to give it timelines, then what we are saying to the country is that we are getting into another election cycle, election mood, election, euphoria before even a year is over. And what I would be saying is that yes, it is true that there are pertinent issues in the Constitution that will require to be addressed at one point or the other. The question in my mind is this: is it now? Is this the right time to start addressing this, knowing that in that same Constitution, it says that when a government has been elected, it has a cycle of 5 years to roll. So whichever way, we know that we have a window of between now and those 5 years. What we'll be asking ourselves is, structurally, have we prioritized what the needs of this country and our people are, such that would be saying at this time would be doing this. And at this time, there will be, actually in the Bible, Debarl, it says there's a time for everything. There's a time to be born, there's a time to die. Indeed, even in running this country, there's a time for campaigning. There'll be a time when we have to build the country. There'll be a time when we can say that this is the right time to have this constitutional debate and have the constitutional referendum. But I would be also referring to exactly what I said the last time, that you know, the question that will indeed validate whether what we are doing is legitimate or not is when we say that these are the real reasons and these are the actual questions we want the referendum to be based on. And as I said here last time, if really it is just about a few individuals saying that we want to tickle this one and tickle the other one, such that at the end of this process, then you find that I'll still continue to be relevant in politics. I want this position, I want that position, because I say that with a very clear mind, Debarl, that this has happened before. Actually, remember the entire debate between the Bomas draft, between the Kilifi draft, between what in the last clamor. It was really about who is going to be sitting where.
Yes.
Including, actually, even the house that I sit in, the Senate itself, was a big debate. Are we going to have a Senate? Are we not going to have this one? Who will be where? And remember, we even debated here, and I've contributed to it, that actually most of the members who are in the Senate then, who could not see themselves in the Senate, were part of the people who are fighting it. What I'm saying in a nutshell is this, that political greed, personal gratification of individuals, most of the time has taken priority over national issues in this country, and this is what the referendum would be if it was intended just for individuals. So at the end of the day, in my view, when we have this debate at this time, raise it to that tempo, I believe it becomes a distraction. We should first focus between now and an agreeable time. When can we first give the country what it requires? Time to build the country. Implement what the government promised we are going to do, and then absolutely we are going to have that referendum. There's no problem with a referendum. Let's have it at the right time with the right questions, and let's adjust that constitution so that it answers to what is best for the people of this republic. I believe that should be the way to go.
Right. Well, I can see Senator Aaron Cheruiyot smiling. Riley.
Yeah.
Right. You wanted to comment on that,
yeah.
But you can also tell us what what the star is actually holding for us this morning. If we may just pick up the star, why Ruto changed tune on referendum, and of course we've had him also, circling back on that particular bite. 2010, he was a no guy, and of course right now also he's changed tone as far as this referendum is concerned. Is it about political expediency and survival for 2022?
I will tell you that, but you know, earlier you had asked us, I have two questions to answer. Before this, you had asked about the cartoon.
The cartoon, yes.
The Gado cartoon.
Yeah, could we just pick the cartoon, please,
and
as well?
If you realized, Otiende Amollo so conveniently avoided the discussion about the cartoon and went into typical ODM obsession with Ruto, you know, about how he's not pushing the agenda and all that kind of thing. The reason Otiende avoids that kind of discussion is because that cartoon, in essence and conceptually, it is right that this whole referendum issue is a distraction. It is a distraction because right now the country's biggest challenges, for sure, if you're to walk out on the streets and ask Kenyans, what are the things that bother you the most? I am more than sure that more than 90% of Kenyans will not tell you that for the challenges that I continue to face as an individual, they will be answered by a referendum. And therefore, by that concept, that cartoon is right. The only part where I don't agree with it, where it has put the deputy president, the president, and Raila Odinga all together holding on to the big four. I think the people who are pushing the agenda of the big four are the president and his deputy. Raila is outside there together with those who are chasing the skunk called a referendum, because he's the one who's been pushing all this debate. And in fact, now while at that, let me answer you on the second question, Debarl, whether the deputy president has changed tune. I do not think that is factual. That is typical media propaganda about him,
yes.
because do you know why?
Yeah.
You cannot show me, and I can ask you to go wherever you can in all your clips where he has come out and said, I am opposed to a referendum. What he has said, which I want Kenyans to listen keenly to, is that if there will be an attempt to mutilate this constitution just to create positions for 2 or 3 people, that I will not support. That is completely a different thing from saying I am opposed to a referendum. And that is why he has said, what he has said now is that he has just stated his position the same way he's been putting it, but used different words to explain that personally, in his capacity, he is too busy driving the Big Four agenda. Those who have time, like Otiende, who want to have this discussion about whether to have a referendum or not, he is not opposed to their initiatives. He gives them their blessing, let them go sit somewhere, have that discussion, agree on what will be the question, and present us with a date that on this date come and vote on this array of issues. And therefore, he said, I'll turn up and vote. How is that now supposed to be a change of tune? There's absolutely no change of tune, and therefore, you guys in the media also.
So maybe the phraseology is a bit different, but the main item that is really actually trying to project is the same. You know, the problem is that the problem is that our media loves combative nature of politics, where for every national issue there must be 2 opposing sides for your news to make sense, which is really unfortunate, because even in all this referendum issue, look at it this way: if you read the same Star and you open page 5 where they're describing what people have said, here are the remarks from the president. Are you aware, by the way, that the president has come out unequivocally and said, right now my attention is the Big Four. I do not think a referendum is good and proper for this country. And the Star put it and said, this is quoting President Uhuru Kenyatta, I want to deliver on the promises we made to Kenyans. Changing the constitution won't solve the problems we have. Engaging with the private sector on manufacturing, like we are doing, is one of the things that will change the country. He was speaking 2 or 3 months ago at a KEPSA roundtable, and he made his stand publicly known. But because of the nature of our politics, how we want to form a pre-2022 discussion or a duel between the deputy president and Raila, we want to put it as if it is him who's opposed. Nobody is discussing that the president actually, who is our party leader, and I want to believe that is why all of us are saying that this discussion is misplaced. Right now, our attention as Jubilee is on the Big Four, but nobody wants to focus on what the president has said. All that we want to focus on is there's a man called Ruto who is opposed to the constitution. What inconsistency is that on the side of the media? I think it's unfair. It is unfortunate. You guys need to pull up your socks and be sincere to our country. Right.
If you feel that for sure there are issues within this constitution, and I agree, there is no particular constitution that will ever be perfect. At every point in time, there'll be things that we will always disagree with. But what is it that we want us to change? Don't reduce this debate to what Raila has said, what Ruto has said. Okay. It's completely unfair to the country.
So, Eseli, do you agree with the appraisement of Mr. Aaron Cheruiyot that the castigation of the media, you think also we're taking it the wrong way?
For me, whether the DP changed his mind or didn't is neither here nor there. In any case, if he did, he's only human. And we know very well that if you find something that people are clamoring for, and you realize that perhaps that's what they want, and you change your mind as a leader, that's also okay.
Yeah, and
so I don't see anything wrong with
leaders
that.
from their circles also are, urging the deputy president to change his tone about the referendum 2022, isn't it?
But the whole issue of the referendum, I think, has been blown out of proportion. The thing is, this is not new. When we passed this constitution in 2010, we were very clear, and we told people that about 20% of it is not good, and we'll review it. We said pass it, then we'll review it. So what's wrong with reviewing it? And in any case, reviewing it does not necessarily lead to a referendum on all the matters. Take something simple. Do you know that to be a member of the county executive committee, that's the equivalent of a minister at the county, you must be a graduate. But to be a member of the national cabinet, silent. You don't have to be a graduate. So you just look at that little mistake there, that you end up in a situation where a CEC in a county could be more qualified than a cabinet secretary under the same docket. Take sports, for example. Those kinds of things that need to be correct. Some of them don't need a referendum. A few might need a referendum. And remember, we have had this clamor for quite some time. In fact, during the court days, it was one of the things that we had wanted to review that constitution, to look at the governance structure, to look at the inclusivity issues, although we didn't manage to get, or the IEBC declared that we didn't have enough signatures for that. So the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga advocating for a referendum now is not new either, because he has been at least since the 2013 election. So he's declaring it now is not anything new. In fact, I was just going through the Star, and I was amused. Somebody has written something which I also think the same way. We've got two choices: a referendum or a revolution. Which one is better? That's what we have to decide. Because remember, let's not forget, before the handshake, this country was in a very, very bad place. In fact, you can imagine if the handshake had not happened and we came up with the finance bill, what would have happened? I guess we would have had serious trouble in this country. Perhaps the handshake also helped to cool down the tempers, such that the finance bill could pass the way it was, and the president could return it the way it was, and it goes through, and Kenyans complain without erupting into a revolutionary kind of situation. Okay. So what Henry Omakori has said in the Star is what I've been thinking. When we oppose the referendum as such, or reviewing the constitution as such, we are failing to realize that we are also faced with another problem: possibility of a revolution. Because a people taxed to that end, and they can see their money being looted all over, and they can see all these court cases, and they are not the only ones. When you put together the amount of money that the people who have been taken to court are said to have taken, is really a drop in the ocean of what has been lost. That angers the people. So we have two choices. We either accept to sit down in an all-inclusive dialogue to tease out what are the questions we want to check about in our constitution, which ones require referendum, which ones require parliamentary action. Then that way we can diffuse that anger that is actually there in the people. Because if we bury our heads in the sand and assume that Kenyans are happy with the situation, then we as leaders are failing.
Thank you.
Definitely we have that choice: revolution or referendum. All
right. You don't think, let's say from Kimani Wamatangi on this, do we really need a referendum in the first place? And do we need this particular talk? And is Raila Odinga trying also to, change the political tone and tenor in the country, even after the handshake? Because as we can perceive as wananchi, is the fact that, or is the perception that, yes, we've had a handshake, we've had the Building Bridges initiative, we have the 9-point agenda, then also we have a referendum, throwing a spanner in the works as well. So we are left to wonder, where is the needle pointing towards? Is it now the Building Bridges initiative? Is it the referendum? And why should we even consider referendum at this particular time?
Well, I think I saw in yesterday's press, in one of the rallies in Migori, where Raila himself was acknowledging, and when he spoke about the referendum there, he said actually this is part of the Building Bridges initiative. And he tried to frame it around that Kenyans have been promised that the constitution will be reviewed to a higher inclusivity level and so on. But as I've said earlier, okay, one, let's agree, because Raila is a politician, and so he's playing his politics as he has always done in all his life, and he has his opinion, he has his own view as a Kenyan. He's entitled to that. The question that I think we need to be asking ourselves is, should those be the views that should drive the national agenda right now and the national psyche? And should we, especially collectively as leaders, all agree, consent to be bandwagoned into this debate, such that it now becomes what will whip around all of us, and then automatically bring in everybody to this discussion. And you see, once everybody, for example, like we are doing here at Debarl, and especially all leadership now focuses on this debate, people will join in, and as Mheshimiwa Eseli has said, which is a matter of fact, that there has been this discussion all the way for a long time, that about a constitutional change, about a referendum, and I believe it boils down to the same thing. Is this the right time for us to be discussing that? My answer has been a very firm no. Reasons, I mean, where do we place our people? The ones who give us these offices that we occupy, the ones who elect us, where do we place them? Where do we place their needs? I mean, what do we make of the promises that we make to the people at election time? If indeed by just the tweak of some talk, then we can abandon everything. Do you remember, Debarl, less than 2 weeks ago, the national space and psyche was all about taxation. What are we going to do? Yes. You know, to relieve people of this tax burden, and there was the increment of the 8%. And so how then are we going to move the country forward, which I believe should be a good discussion, such that would be saying, you know, how do we relieve our people of this burden? You know, what responsibilities do we bear now? What way forward are we charting for this country and for the people? I believe those are the things that should be occupying center stage right now. Knowing in the back of our minds that within this 5-year journey, the possibility indeed, which would be a good thing at the end of the day, is that we look at the issues that require to be changed in the Constitution, but at the right time, such that as we get into the next dispensation, I mean, we treat it like a staircase, scenario whereby we climb one at a time, and that way would be saying we are answering truthfully to the call of leadership, and true leadership for that matter. That is selfless, and I think the problem I just have with it, with the entire talk, is that it doesn't smell good right now, and this is my view. The reason why it doesn't is because it is relegating to oblivion such pertinent issues. I would want to hear, for example, that this is where we find ourselves now as a country, with our economy, with the needs of our people. And we have issues that we must address about that. We have promises we've made, and this is how we are going to go. And whether we have the Building Bridges initiative, even with the handshake, which I have no problem with actually, it's a good thing, the handshake, for all its intent, to bring the country together, it's a very good thing. I mean, to lower political temperatures, as my colleagues here have said, it's a very good thing. Now, if we stick to that agenda, if the unity that was portrayed by that handshake between His Excellency the President, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, and William Ruto then joining in to also, build momentum in a positive, progressive course, all of them, then that will be good for the country. Right. That's what we want.
Okay, Otiende Amollo, should we condone this debate about referendum right now, even as maybe a media outlet? Should we be conveying these messages about referendum? Is this a debate that you think is healthy for the country right now? Or maybe it's something that we can push it forward, face maybe the demons and its minions some other day?
Of course, the time is ripe, and you cannot put any blame on the media. Let me correct 3 things. First of all, is it true that the Deputy President has been opposed to this idea of a referendum? Of course it is true. I mean, for my brother and friend, Senator, to sit here and say, no, it's a creation of the media, I mean, it is belittling our intelligence, our collective intelligence. I think the fact is as summarized by Leader of Majority Duale in the Star. And he says only a fool does not change his mind. So he is saying DP Ruto has changed his mind, and I agree that he's not a fool. So let's just settle that he was opposed. Now he's supporting. He's supporting in a very strange way. He's saying we support as long as you don't come and cheat us that it was part of the Building Bridges initiative. As long as you don't create petition. What kind of support is that? First of all, I think we all agreed that the initiative was for 2 people. He was not there, and I think the cartoon depicts it. As you see in that cartoon, he is a bystander. On this issue of Building Bridge and the initiative and where we are going, Deputy President Ruto can only watch. Okay. Secondly, let us talk about the question of distraction. It's detraction of a nation on the question of referendum. To be fair, the first time Raila spoke about the question of a referendum was during the Kakamega Devolution Conference. That was 6 months ago, going on 7 months. And the next time he spoke is when Senator Wamatangi is talking about in the context of the Migori elections. That is twice in a span of about 7 months. On the contrary, Deputy President Ruto has been speaking about this matter every day. When in opposition, he was very vociferous. Now, even in support, he's equally vociferous. So if one is to be talking about detraction, I think that in fairness, it would be the Deputy President and his regime of supporters like my brother, Senator Cheruiyot here. But they are talking about it because they are worried about what it portends. And let me now talk about that question. Is it ripe? It is ripe for at least 5 reasons. First of all, if we are serious and we've all committed to supporting the handshake and the building bridges initiatives, the 9 matters that are identified in that document, all of them are constitutional questions. All of them. Because already the Constitution provides for them, whether you take devolution, or you take corruption, or you take ethnicity, or you take inclusivity, all of them. And therefore, it is inevitable that if the team is serious, whatever practical and proper solution they come up with must invite revisiting the Constitution. That is why it is right. Secondly, the history of this country has shown that every time a person is on their second term, especially a president, then that is the ideal time to have any fundamental and meaningful changes. We would not be having this constitution that we now pride ourselves in if President Kibaki was not on his second term. President Uhuru is on his second term, and if we don't have it now, we will not have it for at least another 10 years. Thirdly, a 10-year cycle is an ideal time internationally in the life of any nation to review its fundamental document and ask itself, is it serving us right or not? Now, we are not reviewing this document, and we are not talking of the changes because of, as I've heard many people say, there was some 20% that was not right. We are changing it and reviewing it because there are certain questions that could not be answered at that time, and we've come to agree to that. One of them, for example, the ultimate question of the system of government we have, which is the presidential system, was a trade-off that we will give you a presidential system, then you will give us devolution, and vice versa. Now devolution is entrenched. No one can use that as blackmail. Now we can revisit the question of the system of government without the fear of blackmail. There are such questions as cost of government. We created an ambitious and very progressive structure, in my view, in terms of devolution. But what has happened is that national government has maintained the original structure in terms of provincial administration. So we have 2 parallel structures operating side by side. The constitution that we have had contemplated that one will give way to the other. It hasn't come to happen. So we must now ask ourselves, how really do we want? Do we want to be bolder than we were in the constitution? So there are very many fundamental questions. And of course, the last one, and I've spoken to this, is Article 89. Yes. Article 89 requires of the constitution, without even amending it, it requires the IBC to review the boundaries, names, and numbers of constituencies, Article 89(2), in period between 8 years and a maximum of 12 years. If you look at when we enacted this constitution in 2010, we are on the 8th year. The 12th year is 2022. So inevitably between now and 2022, we must revisit the question of boundaries. There is no question in this country that is more emotive than boundaries. Now when you get there, why would you want to go to such an emotive matter and fail to take the opportunity to look at the other fundamental matters? Which is why I'm opposed even to the bill by my brother Dr. Amollo, seeking to only look at one small aspect, the question of postponing the presidential election, the general election from August to December. Yes. One thing that must be pointed out, and I hope I will get time to explain that, is that contrary to what my brother Dr. Amollo says, and contrary to what the Legal Affairs Committee has said, even that requires a referendum because it affects the term of the president. when you touch on the term of the president, even if you reduce it by a day or increase it by a day, it's a referendum question under Article 255. So my view is all these collectivities, and including the question of should we have the general election on the same day for the president, the governor, the MCA, the parliament on the same day, or should we desegregate them? All those are things we can discuss in the context of the changes that we need to the law. So certainly the time is ripe. Secondly, it should not be a detraction. It should be a meaningful initiative where we should be, the lead really should come in the context of the Building Bridges initiative. That is why I've kept saying that even that team needs to open up in terms of its work.
Thank you.
So that we need to know how we come in, how we contribute, and including the timelines. Yes, the time is ripe.
The time is ripe, he says. And of course, just to confirm what the Constitution says on Article 89, Sub-Article 2, that the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission shall review the names and boundaries of constituencies at intervals of not less than 8 years and not more than 12 years. But any review shall be completed at least 12 months before a general election of members of parliament. That is from the Constitution as well. But the question will be again, looking at the 9 points agenda before we take a short break, that we have the issue of lack of ethos, we have the issue of corruption, we have the issue of ethnic antagonism, we have the issue of shared prosperity, devolution as well. If all this, they are actually under the rubric of the Building Initiative, Building Bridges Initiative, why then do we need to have the referendum? Or the referendum is only the avenue that we can, because I can see most of these things, they're actually tied in. What they are really talking about, more or less. In some of this agenda, Otiende, you can help me here. Inclusivity, when we talk about inclusivity, and when we talk about devolution, I mean, all these things, yes, they are piggybacking on the Constitution themselves, or itself.
Debarl, these things are quite logical in my view. It was a necessary consequence of the Building Bridges initiative that we were going to have to look on changes in the Constitution. And whether it's by referendum or otherwise would be a matter to be determined later. Most likely it would be because of the nature of the issues that are covered. And it dovetails very well in this context that let us then bring all those issues, but let's not bring them in limbo or in isolation. Let's use the process of the Building Bridges initiative and bring all those processes, including the parliamentary processes, so that we have one major discussion. As I understand it, the team plans to have national discourse around these matters. I think it is in the context of that national discourse that we would take the opportunity to cover what is covered in the 9 points and to suggest inclusion of any other fundamental matter that requires address which may not have been covered in that initiative.
Thank you.
That way we have one logical process.
Right, welcome back. You're watching People and Politics here on AM Live. I think we should help Jacob Midio, guys, right? He says, good morning, sorry, I'm unable to make it today because I have no water at all in my house. So Jacob Midio cannot shower this morning, cannot be.
We should send this is Wamatangi to Rarieda.
There's a water problem in Nairobi. Yeah, so even our
Did he
leaders
say he's showering from the house or from another location? You know?
from the house.
Or where he slept last night.
But he also needs to clarify whether he paid his bill.
Right, but on a serious note as well, DPP Haji orders prosecution of TV anchor Jackie Maribe and boyfriend Joseph Irongo over the murder of Monica Juma. That is the latest that we're having this morning. That is Director of Public Prosecution Haji, that is Nurdin Haji. He orders prosecution of TV anchor Jackie Maribe and her boyfriend Joseph Irongo over the murder of Monica Juma. And also, just to prime you on what is happening on Migori, the latest that we just, Monica Kimani, I should say, my tongue is tripping over there. I'm being corrected by my director. Also, let's just see where the latest that we have from the provincial reports, or the latest from the provisional results from Migori. Migori senatorial poll results place Ayako ahead with 20,628 votes against 11,382 biocage in 171 centers. This is the latest that we received since last night, and I think we've not gotten any information trickling in since then. You find it a bit queer?
That's the biggest problem, you know.
Oh, yes.
We are talking about referendum, and the people to conduct that referendum would have been IEBC. Now look at them falling flat on their faces, because it's now morning since the voting happened, and more than 12 hours after the polling stations closed, they have not given us the results. Yet previously, during any by-election, you get them, you see all the media houses streaming the results as they come in, and this time it looks like they have gone manual. And we are talking about a referendum. And
so we're not using the same template that we use for the general election, for also the
by-election. Even for by-elections.
The real time that we
for by-elections. Even for by-elections.
Otiende should tell us what ODM is up to.
I think this one, you know,
what is it up to right now?
This one doesn't give confidence.
Only on that issue. First, what Dr. Eseli Simiyu is saying, why is the media not showing the result per polling station? Has anybody stopped them? I'm not aware. But Senator, Senator is worried. You know why Senator is worried? He thinks that the Jubilee has the original template to stealing. And he thinks that the handshake comes with that. For us, we don't steal, we just win. As we are going to win, Migori.
I think this issue of IEBC is quite important, because if we are talking about referendum, and yet large sections of this country are not comfortable with this IEBC. Now, if we are going to talk about a referendum, we must start early to reform that IEBC and make it more responsive and more build confidence in the people in that institution. Because remember, we are talking of a referendum, and then there's the Building Bridges team and so on. You remember that the Building Bridges team itself is exclusive. It's not inclusive. It's very exclusive. So already starting from a shaky premise, if they are the ones to midwife the issue of referendum review, then that would be a very unfortunate way of starting, because they are not a very inclusive team. However, all that said and done, I still believe that we should not hate the message because we don't like the messenger. So just because it's Raila talking about referendum, we should not just dismiss it because maybe some of us have got our differences with the Raila Odinga. I think what we need to do is we need to accept that indeed there is a problem, because we talk about the economy. When you talk about the economy, you realize that the economy is where it is because of a dysfunctional parliament, in the sense that parliament is supposed to set the limits of how much money the government can borrow, especially from the international market. But they keep on raising the bar, and Parliament just says A, and they vote it on. So there is already a dysfunction in Parliament. Is this a result of our constitution right now? I would think, and Jacoyo Midio said this here before, that perhaps it's time we started considering proportional representation as our electoral system, so that way we'll be able to actually ensure that the people who get into those houses are actually up to the task. Number two, you will be able to ensure that you are not having to then nominate people. You don't have to have women representative seats. You don't have to nominate people in the Senate to cover the gender issue. You don't have to nominate people in the county assemblies to cover the gender issue. Because if you are using a party list with proportional representation, you ensure that you have actually done the proper mix. So that already will reduce the number of representatives that we have. So we might need to look at our electoral system, our way of electing our leaders. Should we go proportional representation? Because then that again affords us a chance to ensure that the people who are actually on that list are up to the task. Otherwise, you get a parliament where every time Rotich wants to borrow some money, he just brings something to parliament to increase the amount that the government is allowed to borrow. So now we've ended up with a huge debt where over 870 billion annually is going into debt service, and then we start blaming the wage bill. And in my opinion, the wage bill is not the main problem. It's the debt service that's the main problem. So I think we should relook at this. I think it's time we sat down and talked about these issues. If it ends up with being a referendum or not, should be okay, but nobody should use the referendum thing as a rungu over other leaders' heads, that you will do a referendum to finish you, will do a referendum. No, that's not the way. That's not the way, because that's not the way we want the country's direction to go. We want an all-inclusive system. Now, you cannot start from a premise of sort of blackmail and, sort of dismissing people.
Thank you.
On matters on reviewing the Constitution.
Right.
It's such an important thing to all Kenyans that they have to be all included in this.
Right. Let's hear from Aaron Cheruiyot. Is also Deputy President William Ruto trying to banish his own image when he's actually using maybe this rung of referendum on Raila Odinga as well? Right? Just to, or is it the other way around?
It's the other way around, but of course, whenever it is Debarl, you will expect him to tell the question.
Why is no. The question is, the way you perceive it, because either way, each and every one of them from the other side of the divide, they're trying to get some political mileage and expediency out of this.
You know,
be it Raila Odinga or...
I get your question.
Yeah, but my question is he also trying to banish his image with the referendum?
I don't think so. And also, let's remember one thing. And this is an inconsistency that you get from the ODM brigade. And you even had my good friend, Dr. Otiende, go into this inconsistency this morning, where they keep on telling us that thanks to the Building Bridges initiative, we are going to have this referendum, and people like the Deputy President do not understand it. The thing that I say to them is that as ODM, please do not export your bad habits into Jubilee. Because
what are the bad
in
habits?
ODM, Baba is a constitution. Once he speaks, that is the end of the story. In Jubilee, we have a structured way of doing things. For example, when we say our party leader, none other than, Otiende tells us that the reason why the Deputy President does not understand this referendum issue is that because he's not part of the handshake. Then I ask him, what about President Uhuru Kenyatta? Was he also not part of the handshake? Isn't it on record that he has gone and said at this point in time, for him, changing the Constitution is not a priority? That is the inconsistency that I'm talking about. That we have our own way and our own traditions as a party, and how we follow these instructions through the rank and file. The reason why NASA is dead, for example, today, is because ODM tried to implore everybody to follow its strange way of doing things, where the party leader decides and everybody sings to his tune. Ford Kenya, Wiper, and the rest of the parties, they said, no, that's not how we operate, and that's why NASA continues to be in tatters today. Had, for example, Raila Odinga consulted his co-principals in the coalition before doing the handshake, perhaps we would have been having a more formidable opposition today, and even Building Bridges initiative wouldn't be running into any sort of political turbulence, as is the case now. Back to this issue, Debarl, about the referendum debate. This is my take on it. What have we undertaken a study of our compliance level of this constitution, first of all, before we debate about changing it? When you speak about the judiciary, how is the judiciary living up to the dictates of a constitution? Are they biting more than what is their share? When you speak about parliament, is it functioning effectively? Are they rolling more than what is expected of them, even up to and including the executive? We keep on seeing things that are not properly in function with the dictates of the constitution. You keep on seeing cabinet secretary for interior standing line to toe with the Inspector General of Police and sort of appearing to issue directions to him, while we know very well that constitutionally the IG does not take instructions from anyone. Even us as a people and as a population, Article 10 that speaks of our values and the national values that you're supposed to espouse as a people.
Yes.
How much compliant as we as a people, the people of Kenya, so that before we begin to change this constitution and say there are things that are not working, I think the biggest question that we should be asking ourselves is, have we first complied to what it is telling? Even Article 89 that Dr. Otiende is speaking about, one of the things you need to remember, Daktari, is that Senate has done the county boundaries bill. The largest dispute in terms of boundaries and constituencies is in the county boundaries. And as Senate, we have already provided the necessary legislation that is needed to review boundaries of counties, counties and wards,
Yes.
not constituencies, because that is not within our mandate.
This is Mutua's bill.
That bill now has been sent. That bill now has been sent to the National Assembly, where Eseli and Otiende can give their input about what Article 89 needs to do. But for sure, do you believe, for example, Otiende, that there will be constituencies that will either accept to be merged or to be reduced in size? It will be almost impossible, because people live, in fact, when people are discussing about how we need to have lesser counties, if you go to the population, the general population feels that, in fact, the number of counties will increase. Most of the counties, you'll keep on finding these disputes between the northern and the southern part of the county. If you go to Migori, for example, where the by-election is going on, the Kuria side completely wants independence from the Doluo-leaning part of the county, and therefore the general discussion is that they want even to increase, not to reduce, and that discussion is something that we may have. I personally am not opposed to any initiative to audit and say 8 years for sure. It is enough a period for you to know what works and what doesn't work. I will one of the things that I will strongly propose is for devolution to be entrenched. You cannot have the kind of Senate that we have right now and expect it to provide equal checks and balances to our county government. Many of the intention of what Senate should have been were taken away during the constitution making process, especially when the draft bill came to Parliament. So much of Senate was watered down, and if there's an attempt to try and make either through legislation or through a referendum, Senate perhaps more stronger and have more teeth to keep governors in check, I will support, and so many other positive initiatives. What I do not want us to lose as a country is sight of the fact that there are more pressing challenges that Mwananchi continues to face on a daily basis, that if we went outside NTV studios and asked them about now, issues of food security, high cost of living, some of which this constitution has already addressed, but we haven't complied fully. And therefore the discussion we should be having is, how do we ensure that for sure we ease on the life pressures of our citizenry as a leadership? That should be our biggest obsession at the moment.
So talking of compliance then, what is the sole, because we had the commission or Constitution Implementation Commission that I think also outlived its tenure, and it was dissolved. And we have the commission committee of, is it Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee within Parliament? What is the sole function of this particular oversight committee within Parliament? Is it just to make sure that we have a seamlessly implemented constitution when you're talking about compliance? Or maybe it is beyond my ken? You can actually try and help me here, Wamatangi.
Yes, Debarl, I will. I'll mention about it. But just before I do that, you started when we came back on air with reading the 411. And you see the title of our show is People and Politics. I find sometimes we bend too much to the politics and forget the people, and see the people part of it.
Yes.
And you started with that 411 where you read out what the decision of the DPP is on this Jackie Maribe Joey case, and I think, to me, Debarl, yes, I would want to mention just for purposes of really portraying what the feeling of the people in the country, and especially of parents, are. Because if you look at for example, like these two individuals, like the young lady Jackie Maribe, who was a very promising journalist, and now having been hooked into this web that would probably, and I hope not, see her serving jail term for a long time. I mean, for murder.
Is that really germane with our conversation?
I just wanted. That's why I said I'm bending on the people issue, because
could we bend on it much later, because we just about
you
to
read
wrap
this
up.
out, and what I wanted to say, Debarl, on this one is I believe that we should be saying that as young people we must point out to our young people, if we let our young people really get sold and hooked into this kind of life that they do not belong to or they can't afford. That's why you see this kind of things happening. Then, having said that, two other issues that came up that I think I would want to mention. One is you also read out that that there is deemed to be a punishment that will be coming to ODM legislators by virtue of how they voted.
Yes, that's what we want to actually go
you know,
into.
And you know, I thought that is also one part that we need to discuss very, very well, because Debarl, I think even as we are talking about, and I concur with some of the sentiments that were raised by one of our viewers in a tweet there. I think even as we talk about reviewing the Constitution, we also need to look at other statutes and see, you know, how are they helping this country? What should be corrected? Because, for example, ask yourself, why should members of parliament be living in fear and looking over their shoulders? That once you go into a house that you have been elected to go into and express your opinion in the best way you see to represent your people, then that you'll be looking over your shoulder, because after that, you're going to be called and whipped. Or de-whipped or punished. I think those are some of the issues that would need to be looking at. But then on this other last issue that you raised, let me first say this very quickly. And I think as we review this, we will need to really focus on the legality of what's going on. Let's start with IEBC. You see, Debarl, even as IEBC conducts elections right now in Migori, it is a constitutional requirement that every constitutional body must adhere to the 1/3 gender rule. Now look at the constitution of the IEBC right now. It has got 3 strong men who are the only commissioners. And you would be asking yourself, yes, in the first place, you see we are looking at I'm driving towards the referendum debate. And you'd be asking yourself, even as we drive to this debate, because what we'll need to be doing, Debarl, in my view, is first doing housekeeping first. You know, and let me first make my let me first
that led to these commissioners being, you know, all male, or so to speak, or male dominated.
Yes, I mean, you know, I'm saying in very simple and plain language, yes, Debarl, that even as we embrace this wholesome debate about the Constitution, we need to first do proper housekeeping, because in my view, and this is what I had said earlier, I think this whole constitutional review debate is actually a political dust storm that has just been, you know, let me tell you, when I first went to my first election in 2007, and I was in 2005 and 07, and I was almost going to win. One of the candidates said, "Let us go to that counting hall and break the bulbs and everything, and you know, and in the darkness you are going to do things." And this kind of political dust storm, what we'll be asking ourselves with this discussion on the referendum, is somebody trying to switch the lights off on us, and maybe cause mischief in the meantime, because the Constitution provides for example, in the process of a referendum, if it is a parliamentary initiative, if it is a popular initiative, whoever is sponsoring such a referendum would have to formulate a question, bring it to the fore. There is a process of taking it, for example, through county assemblies, have the discussion until it arrives in parliament, so it is known what the questions are. You know, but somebody has fired a shot in the air, a heavy one, with a cannon, such that everybody now is talking about the referendum, not even talking about what the referendum should constitute about. And that's how the debate about a referendum should start. And so that's what I'm saying, that because we have made it a big talk, what we need to be asking ourselves is, has somebody just climbed over a hill, fired a big shot in the air, and left us in the dust, such that we are all, you know, talking and looking over behind and around, without seeing really probably what the issue or the mischief is. And I believe that because you had brought this question on the constitutional commission in parliament, you know, you'd be asking yourself, even before you arrive there, are we there yet? Oh, no, about this referendum, have we started climbing the tree from up, or have we been hoodwinked? Is it for real?
Thank you.
And I want to summarize by saying, I believe, like I said in my first submission, that the debate on a referendum right now in October of 2018, from an election 1 year, I believe is premature. We should not be having this debate or discussion as a country. We should be asking when, how, and what are we going to do?
Thank you.
To liberate our people and give them a better life and a better day.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to sum up this referendum debate. Otiende Amollo, your closing remarks on it. First of all, he disagrees with you. You say the time is premature. You say the time is ripe. Right now, it is ripe. Let's go, let's go for broke and have the referendum. He says, no. We shouldn't go for broke and have referendum. Then, how are we going to phrase these particular questions, and what will be the question? Just briefly. I mean, we have all these things, myriad of issues that we have.
Thank you. I'll try and focus. My friend Senator Wamatangi has brought the entire basket of issues, and we can't discuss all of them. But first, when I listen to Senator Cheruiyot, I see the dilemma in the DP's camp. Senator Cheruiyot starts by talking about...
There are no camps.
Hold on.
That's your theory.
You will revert.
He wants to box me into a camp.
Senator Cheruiyot,
I'm not aware I belong to any camp.
When he speaks, and you see, and he's constituted himself into a professor of NASA politics, which I will not go into for now. I will focus on the question of the referendum. He goes into great depth why, in his view, it is not the time, why we should start by implementing the constitution before we talk of changing it, and then he concludes by saying he is not in principle opposed to its changes. And I think that's the dilemma that him and his entire camp find themselves, which however constituted. They do not want changes to the constitution because they believe this constitution has so far worked well for those who want to acquire power other than through proper accountable systems. But they don't want to be seen to be the obstacles to the changes that most Kenyans need. So they talk tongue-in-cheek. They say, we support, however. I respect Senator Wamatangi, who comes out expressly and says, I don't support at all. And I'll come back to him. But for Senator Cheruiyot, you must now decide. You can't keep blowing hot and cold. We support, however we support. I mean, don't be a watermelon in this context. Senator Wamatangi says that these talks are distracting us from doing what we should do. And I wonder, if you want to drive and somebody wants to talk, what is the problem? Drive, let them talk, or you talk as you drive. Why can't you multitask? After all, Article 33 of the very constitution we are talking about gives us freedom of expression. You cannot start saying that we don't want Kenyans to talk because we are focused on the 4 agenda. I mean, really, are they in contradistinction? Why don't you just implement the agenda 4, or even 5 if you wish, or 6, and let people who want to talk? How does it stop you? It does not.